All right, friends, today we're going to be working in Transaction Desk again, and this time we're navigating the Transactions navigation bar as well as creating a transaction. So from your agent dashboard, you're going to go to the left-hand side to the toolbar. You can expand your toolbar and select on Transaction. It has a little house next to it. When you open up your transactions, it'll be in grid mode or list mode. To change the two modes, simply come to the right-hand upper corner and click on the 3 lines or the 4 squares, depending on which way your screen is. Go ahead and try toggling between the two modes and choose one that you prefer. On your transaction navigation bar, you are also going to have a filter bar here on the top. This will allow you to filter through dates, types of files, the status the files are in, if the files are just yours or shared. You can sort the files, and when complete and you don't need any filters, you can clear them with one click of a button. Let's go ahead and change some filters and see how the screen changes. I'm going to click on Active, Open, and Pending. Once I apply this filter, the screen will change and anything that has a closed complete, expired, or withdrawn will all remove from the screen. Here we go. Now, as you can see, all of these are filtered by active, open, or pending, and they are sorted by last modified. The reason I have them last modified is so that any file that I'm working on at this moment will remain at the top of the list. If I were to click on this file here, it would then jump to the top because it would be the most recent last modified file. If you were to place them in name mode, this would sort them by their name. However, this is all of your files from the beginning of time. I recommend keeping this in last modified, so all of your current files are going to be kept to the top. Let's clear this filter. In order to create a transaction, on the upper right-hand corner, you have a plus button with the word Add underneath it. Go ahead and click on this. This is going to create a transaction. You can use a transaction to represent any interaction with a client, from a new listing to the time of an offer. You can add a transaction manually, where you manually provide all of the transaction information, or you can use an MLS listing or the tax data record to automatically populate many of the fields in the transaction, decreasing the time it takes to add a transaction in Transaction Desk. Let's go ahead and navigate through this. In the name field, you're going to enter in the name for the transaction. Typically, this is the street address of a property or a consumer's name, and sometimes it can be both. I'm going to use Fred and Wilma Flintstone for the example. You can use whoever you'd like on yours. The next drop-down is going to be templates. We're going to talk about templates in another video, but if you were to have templates set up, they would appear here in the drop-down. Next is going to be the type. We're utilizing a residential sale. The import data is optional. You do not need this in order to proceed. However, if you were doing an offer to purchase, at this time, you could pull the data from the MLS. My market works off of RealTracs here in Middle Tennessee, so we're going to select this. From there, I can go into the MLS in RealTracs, copy the MLS number, and come back into Transaction Desk and paste the number into the field. The Add Me as the blank is for you to identify if you are the listing agent, selling agent, neither, meaning you're facilitating, or both. If you select both, you would be a dual agent. Make sure you check with your broker first before you click this button. On the bottom, there is a Use Wizard. I recommend having this checkbox checked so it will walk you through a 5-step series to create the transaction. When complete, click Create. If you imported from the MLS, then much of the listing information is populated automatically from the MLS listing into the fields on step 1 of the wizard. At the top of the page, you can do any of the following. You can rename the transaction name. From here, hypothetically, if you already have the street address, you could come in and modify this to have the street address instead of buyer's representation. The next field is going to be the status. The status automatically defaults to open. I'm going to change this to active. Once a transaction goes under contract, I can simply come in and change it to pending, and when complete, I can change it to closed. To save, you just simply check on the check mark. Make sure you save and save often so you don't miss out on your work. The next one is going to be email upload. This link here you can save into your Google, Outlook, or any other email server. As a contact, you can label this as, in my example, Flintstone Transaction Desk email. That way, if I'm ever doing any type of communication or attachments in an email, I can CC this or forward to this email address, and those attachments and correspondence will save into the transaction desk document. Up next is going to be if you wanted to download the contact card. In this case, we don't have any contacts added in just yet, so we do not need this button. Your menu button with the 3 dots across the top toolbar is going to give you the option to delete the transaction, go into Teams and Sharing, add in notes, duplicate this transaction, apply a template, create a template, import data, archive, or change transaction status. If we didn't import the data previously on the first step, you can import the data here. And your screen will be very similar. It will just only give you the 2 boxes. You want to ensure that the checkbox for automatically populate forms is checked. That way, the data will pull from the listing. When complete, click Import. This will then auto-populate your fields. So if you were working with a consumer and you were signing a buyer's representation agreement on the beginning of this transaction, and then you went and showed properties and you needed to come back in and all of these fields were blank because you only had buyer's representation completed, you could use this menu button and import your data from here. Otherwise, if you don't have a buyer's representation signed prior to showing, you would be able to complete the steps as we did just a moment ago. If you're going to delete a transaction, make sure you check with your broker first. Transactions should not be deleted, especially if there's any signings that have been completed by the consumer, because there is a statute of limitations for 3 years in Tennessee and 7 years federally, and in some cases you might need to keep them even longer. If the transaction was created on accident or was a duplicate, then in that case, it may be applicable to delete the transaction. Some brokers may have delete transaction turned off in their broker tools. So if you do not see this button, it might be because your broker has the setting turned off. Teams and Sharing is a really great feature to have when you're working with a co-agent or if you operate on a team. We will talk about Teams and Sharing in another video. Let's go ahead and work our way through the wizard. Ensuring that all the property detail is completed from the property MLS poll, I'm going to go ahead and update anything that I'd like to update. For example, instead of RD, I prefer to spell out the word road. For the counties, because this is going to fill in, and I know that the purchase and sale agreement already has county in the pre-printed text, I only need the word Montgomery in this field. If you you know the page number or the deed book number, they will also go here. If you're uncertain of where to find this, it's going to be in the MLS. Oftentimes, next to the tax amount, there's a hyperlink that will link you to CRS tax status. From here, you can find the deed book and the page number. If not, this can also be found on the deed. Check with your broker for assistance, and they'll be able to help you identify what those two numbers are. Next on the list is going to be the property type. We've already told it was a residential property, but if you accidentally click the wrong one, you can change it here. School district does not autofill on the form, so you can fill it in if you desire. The instrument number box talks to the line on the RF401 line 9. The instrument number is a special number found on the recorded deed. This is not the parcel or tax ID number. This is specific to this property's deed. If you're uncertain where to find this number, check with your broker. The tax number here, however, is the tax number, or also known as the parcel ID number. This can be found in the tax records. If you're uncertain, check with your tax assessor's office, or you can find this information on CRS tax data in most cases. Let's move on down to the listing information. The listing price automatically autofills in from the MLS when you do an MLS poll. However, we need to identify what the purchase price is going to be. Let's assume that the buyer has said that they're going to offer full price. And with this, they'd like to make an earnest money or trust money deposit of $1,000. The deposit amount automatically fills into the earnest money trust money line in your contract. If there was a required additional deposit, you can place that deposit here on the next box. This would be applicable if there was additional earnest money needing to be placed if there was a special contingency, or things like a lot deposit, or also known as a builder's deposit. These can all be annotated in the file here. Up next is going to be property includes. This box right here autofills on the RF401 on the front page under Section B. Section B states that the items listed in this box are going to automatically convey with the property at no additional cost to the buyer. This is where you would type in things like the refrigerator, maybe a shed, any item that pertains to the house that would otherwise not convey would need to be listed here. This box is only for items of real property or things such as the refrigerator or maybe a shed that is allowed to be sold with the property, even though it's considered personal property. If you're uncertain what to place in this box, make sure you check with your broker. The next box is property excludes. The excludes automatically autofills on the RF401 on page 1 under Section C. This would be items that would be excluded from the property. These are often found on the RF201, the seller's disclosure for the property. And these disclosures often will say if something's not going to remain, such as a dining room chandelier. Maybe this crystal chandelier is going to be removed from the property and a different chandelier is going to be installed in its place. If that's the case, you would type in this box that it's being excluded from the property. Any item that's listed in paragraph A on the MLS that would also otherwise be excluded would need to be annotated in this box here. Things such as doorbell systems that have cameras. This system is considered part of the security system and is a part of paragraph A. So if the seller has annotated that the doorbell camera is not to remain, and they will put in a regular doorbell prior to closing, then the doorbell camera would need to be removed and excluded from the agreement. Any leased items that the seller has disclosed that's on the property would be listed here in leased items. This is also found on page 1 of the RF401. Leased items include items such as propane tanks, water softener systems, sometimes solar panels, security systems, just to name a few. Check with the listing agent and the seller's property disclosure to see if there are any lease items on the property that the buyer can assume responsibility of. If they choose that they'd like to assume responsibility of said items, it would be listed here. Make sure you're specific in regards to what it is. Up next, you're going to go ahead and click the Next button. Up next is going to be all of the transaction dates that are going to talk to the contract documents moving forward. From here, we have the list date automatically autofilling in because we did an MLS pull. We do not need the expiration date here on the buyer side. However, if you were working with a listing, you could place the listing expiration date here and it would fill in on the RF 101. The next box is the offer date. I caution you to use the offer date in this mode, strictly because we have consumers that are signing from all sorts of places in the world, and not everybody's on the same day as the other person is. So if you were to select the offer date of today, and the consumer was on the other side of the world, and they might be asleep, and they may not sign until technically tomorrow, at that time, this offer date that's going to preprint on the form is going to be inaccurate. So I recommend leaving this blank, but you can do what's best for your business process. After that is going to be the offer expiration date. This is when the time limit to the offer expires. Check with the listing agent to see if there is a time limit to the offer. Maybe they've requested for the seller to have 24 hours from time of offer to review and reply. If you know that your client is not going to be signing until 5 o'clock tonight and the seller has requested for a 24-hour period, you might need to change this to 5 o'clock tomorrow. Once the transaction goes pending, you can change the binding agreement date here. This binding agreement date is going to talk to all of your amendments moving forward. So make sure you come back and enter in this date to save yourself time and the hassle of remembering when the binding agreement date was. If the additional deposit was to be deposited and it had a date, you could place it here and it will talk to that form as well. Let's go ahead and click in our closing date. We're going to assume that we close on the last day of August. Possession date is also important because this box talks to the RF626 and the RF627, which are the post-occupancy and early occupancy agreements for the buyer or the seller. If this was to begin at, say, 9 a.m., you could toggle this here and it will talk to those two forms. Up next, we're going to have our contacts. Notice it pulls in the listing broker and the listing agent. From here, you can edit any information that you'd like to edit. Simply click on the menu button and click Edit. If you were to edit anything in here, just make sure you click Save when you are done. The Identifiers tab is going to have the agent's license number. The address is going to be their office. The same goes for the brokers. When you click on Edit and you go to the Identifiers, you'll be able to see the office license number as well as the office information. This is important because it automatically fills out the final page after the signing signatures from the buyer and the seller under the informational purposes only on the RF401. If you were doing a new construction on the RF403, the same goes for those lines. It will autofill the other firm and other agent's information for you. In this case, there is a primary agent and a co-agent on the listing. Because of the way the system is set up for AuthentiSign, which is your e-signing there's only one listing agent that's able to be annotated on the e-signing. So we're going to change one of the listing agents to a general contact. That way their information is still in the file and you can still CC them at the end, but the primary listing agent is going to stay here underneath the contact, and anytime it needs a listing agent signature, it will automatically identify and place this agent's signature block on the document. Let's go ahead and click Next. In step 4, you're going to enter in your form. If you had templates created, simply click up on the menu bar and apply a template. You can drop down from your templates and select one and click Apply. For training purposes, I'm going to also show you how to manually do this. Right here, you're going to have an Add Plus button. This is going to allow you to add straight from the forms library. This is going to include forms from 2022 and 2023 commercial and residential forms. So make sure you're using the correct forms, which will be for 2023. In the search bar, you can type in the documents and forms that you're looking for. In this case, we're going to use the existing residential form for the RF401. Simply click in the radial button and it will add it to the basket. We're going to assume that this buyer is either FHA or VA, and they're going to also need the RF625. Another form that is great to have in the file is the RF712, Importance of Inspections and Property Survey. Once complete, you can click Add. If there were any other documents that you needed to add in, you can click the Add button and add again. For example, if this was a personal interest disclosure, you might need to add this in, meaning somebody in the transaction is related to you or you have interest in this property. If you accidentally add in a document you no longer need, you can click on the menu bar here on the actual form and you can delete directly from the forms list. If you need to preview before you delete, simply click the preview button. Once you're done adding in all the forms that you need, simply click Next. The Documents section is great because this is where you can drop in those PDF documents from the MLS. Let's go ahead and pull over the property condition disclosure from this MLS. I'm going to download this file and manually upload it. Once I click on the ad, I can drag and drop or I can click. You can also click here to upload from your device, or if you've saved them into the Docs you can grab them here, import from the cloud, or you can have that email upload, which we discussed previously. I'm going to drag and drop. Let's go ahead and grab the compensation agreement as well as the confirmation of agency. All right, once we're back in here, we can click Add, drag and drop. And once we're complete, we click Done. Once you click Done, you're going to see your transaction dashboard. Now, your transaction dashboard may look a little different than mine. To change your dashboard, it's just like your agent dashboard. You're going to simply click on your Lock, Unlock Dashboard. You can drop down as many blue as you'd like, but only as many as 6 green. I like to keep mine in a grid mode with Detail Overview, Forms, Documents, and I'll Sign. And when using the important dates, it's nice because it's going to give me all the important dates that I put in that Detail Overview. Once I've completed all of the drag and drop that I'd like, I can lock my padlock and it will lock things in place. If I want to jump back to the details in the wizard, I can click on this hyperlink here to go to the details. Same for forms, documents, and signing. You also have a right toolbar that expands into the space. If you don't see your toolbar, there is an expand and contrast tool up here on the right-hand corner. Simply click and select or deselect, and it will open and close that toolbar for you. At any time when you're anywhere in the transaction and you'd like to jump back to your dashboard, open up your right toolbar and click Dashboard, and this will jump you back where you started. You can also click through your details, contacts, forms, signings, documents, and any checklists or tasks that are assigned right here in the right toolbar. We will talk about the other hyperlinks in another video, but that's how you add a transaction to your transaction desk. Thanks for watching.